Welcome to the Daily Dose, where we are currently walking through an overview of the entire Bible. Join us today as we learn the story of Scripture and see God's redemptive plan through Christ from cover to cover. Let's listen to Matt Reisetter, Director of Christian Crusaders and the Cedar Falls Bible Conference.
Today we're going to be in Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. Before we get to that, I want to highlight what we've done over the last 3 weeks. We spent 21 episodes on Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. That's Matthew 5 through 7. A lot of very important teaching. He tried to correct some misunderstandings about what Jesus said, what he meant, and what he didn't mean. Sometimes some of the elements of the Sermon on the Mount are misrepresented. Also, just wanted to go through this very important message, sermon, discourse that Jesus makes at the beginning of his ministry. So if you haven't studied that, maybe you want to study that as a whole, and there's 21 episodes right before this one, episodes 464 through 485, I believe, on the podcast. And I would encourage you to share that with your friends, your neighbors, your family members, and our prayer is that people will be encouraged and inspired by that, and we're happy and honored and humbled to be able to provide some great free content for you on the Daily Dose podcast. Now, Jesus comes down from the mountain after giving this message, and he cleanses a leper. Check this out. When he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will. Be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed, and Jesus said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. Very interesting and inspiring event here that takes place. First of all, it says when Jesus came down from the mountain. This is really cool. Obviously, he was giving a sermon on a mountain. He came down from where he was giving that sermon, but this is also a metaphor of what he has done in becoming human. He came down from heaven and lived among humans so that he could take on our sin, so that he could offer us the righteousness, the perfection that he lived. And here he is in a very simple way coming down to be with this guy who needs to be cleansed, this leper, just like we need to be cleansed from our sin. And you got to think that Matthew included him coming down from the mountain, maybe to conjure up that idea. This leper comes before him, and he has great faith. He says, Lord, I know that if you will it, you can make me clean. And I got to believe, and we'll see this in other miracles that Jesus does, the reason that he decided to cleanse this leper instead of not cleanse him, or instead of all the other miracles he could have done, is because this leper gave a great show of faith. He said, Lord, I recognize that you are Lord. I recognize that you're sovereign over the natural world. And if you will it, all you need to do is say the word, and you can heal me of my leprosy. That is a great statement of faith. And I wonder if we have that view of God, that he's big, he's powerful, he can do anything he wants if he wills it. There's nothing that stands in his way. Jesus stretched out his hand and decided to cleanse him. And then something really interesting happens. Jesus tells him to go and offer himself to the priests and give the gift that Moses commanded. He doesn't want to draw a bunch of attention to this miracle. This is going to come up again and again in the Gospels, especially early in Jesus' ministry, and it's referred to by theologians as the Messianic secret. Jesus many times will heal somebody or perform a miracle, and he'll tell the people, don't tell anyone what just happened. Instead, go and do what you would naturally do in response to this healing, as if it wasn't some supernatural, miraculous event. And there's some question about why Jesus ministered in this way. But I think most people agree that Jesus does not want to attract crowds simply because he is this miracle-working circus sideshow type guy. That's not the thrust of his message, healing people and doing miracles and overcoming the natural world with supernatural acts. That's not what he came here for. He came here primarily to live a perfect life and show people righteousness, and then to die a sinless death and pay the penalty for sin that we owe God, and then, of course, rise and offer anybody who would put their faith and trust in him, his death and resurrection, the truth that he proclaimed, offer people who put faith in him that righteousness that they cannot attain on their own, and that penalty paid that they are unable to pay. So Jesus doesn't want to get things mixed up with his followers or the people who are interested in hearing his message. I'm not here primarily to do miracles. Miracles give credibility. They give attestation to the fact fact that I'm claiming to be the Messiah, but that's not the primary reason I'm here. So don't go tell anyone. Instead, go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift as Moses would have commanded. In other words, when somebody was cleansed or could come back into the community after being cast out of the community because of a sickness or an uncleanness, they had to go through these certain rituals to be welcomed back into the community. And so he's saying, go do that the way that Moses would have taught you to do that back in the Old Testament. Let's not create a big stir. Let's not go running back to town like, oh my goodness, you're not going to believe this guy out in the wherever healed me from this thing and blah, blah, blah. And pretty soon you got this huge crowd riled up because of miracles, not because of Jesus' gospel message. I alluded to this earlier, but friends, I hope you understand that in your natural condition, you and I are far from clean. Leprosy is a blip on the radar compared to the spiritual sickness that we have before God. And the only solution to our uncleanness is faith in Jesus Christ, the only one who was clean. Have you received his cleansing? Have you been healed by the great physician? I pray that you have, and I pray that as you go forward, you're helping others come into that same reality. Have a good day.
The Daily Dose is a podcast of Christian Crusaders radio and internet ministry. Please subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star rating, and prayerfully consider financially supporting our ministry at ChristianCrusaders.org, where you can also find our weekly 30-minute radio broadcast, which airs on stations around the world, and where you can listen to our Conversations podcast featuring inspiring interviews with interesting Christians. We also want to highlight 2 ministry partners. First is the Cedar Falls Bible Conference, whose conference videos and schedule of year-round events and activities are available at cedarfallsbibleconference.com. And please consider joining us for their 101st annual conference on Saturday, July 30th through Saturday, August 6th in 2022. Second, if you or someone you know could benefit from an anonymous online Christian mentor, please visit issuesiface.com, which is provided by Power to Change Digital Strategies, our other ministry partner. Thank you for listening, and may God richly bless you.